In mid-June 2026, the credentials to nearly 87,000 corporate firewalls appeared on criminal forums, not from a single breach, but from a machine that had been quietly harvesting them for months. This is the story of how a firewall became a wiretap. In mid-June 2026, a dataset surfaced on underground criminal forums. It contained plain text usernames, passwords, and IP addresses ripped from corporate firewalls across dozens of countries. Security researchers who analyzed the samples confirmed the credentials were real, pointing to active enterprise deployments in financial services, healthcare, and government agencies worldwide. Someone had been systematically bleeding the world's firewalls dry. The data dump was dubbed FortiBleed. The scale of the initial disclosure was striking. The dataset contained configuration files and VPN credentials scraped from 73,932 Fortinet FortiGate firewall URLs. These are not consumer routers. FortiGate appliances are the perimeter security gateways protecting enterprise networks, the first and often last line of defense between the public internet and an organization's internal systems. A credential for one of these devices is not just a username and password. It is a key to the front door of an entire corporate network. Sectors represented in the analyzed samples included financial services, healthcare, government, manufacturing, and energy, a catalog of the highest value targets on the planet. The question was where these credentials actually came from. The answer emerged through a stroke of investigative luck. Researcher Volodymyr Bob Dyachenko discovered that the threat actors had accidentally left one of their own servers publicly exposed. Directory indexing enabled, no authentication required. The full tool chain was visible. Operator bash histories, victim databases, cron schedules, automation scripts, and tool code with comments written in Cyrillic. The actors were Russian-speaking, and according to Sokradar's analysis, they had been running this operation since at least February 2026. The operation began with reconnaissance at industrial scale. Automated scanners swept 59.3 million internet hosts, probing for FortiGate management interfaces on ports 443, 4443, 8443, and 10443. Approximately 437,000 FortiGate devices were fingerprinted. The attackers then assembled targeted word lists, tuned to FortiGate naming conventions, patterns built around admin, FGTS, and fort prefixes, and started hammering. The campaign launched 1.16 billion credential attempts against more than 320,000 FortiGate targets, and 2.1 billion brute force attempts against more than 160,000 Microsoft SQL servers. This was not a team of hackers clicking buttons. This was an automated industrial machine running continuously. Initial access combined brute force with credential stuffing, recycling credentials from prior Fortinet leaks against organizations that had never rotated them. As one researcher described it, there was no zero-day here, no novel exploit. This was credential negligence weaponized into a machine. On unpatched devices, the attackers exploited known authentication bypass vulnerabilities. On patched ones, they simply tested whether organizations had ever changed their default passwords. Many had not. Once admin access was achieved, the real work began. What happened next is what separates FortiBleed from an ordinary credential dump. The attackers deployed a tool called FortiGate Sniffer, a custom binary written in Golang, purpose-built for the FortiGate environment. Its defining feature was subtle and precise. It did not inject malicious code into the operating system. Instead, it abused a legitimate FortiOS diagnostic command called diagnostic, a standard packet capture utility present on every FortiGate device. Because the sniffer operated through a built-in feature rather than injected kernel code, it blended seamlessly into legitimate administrative activity in the device logs. Each compromised firewall became a silent wiretap, completely invisible to the security team on the other side. FortiGate Sniffer captured authentication traffic from 24 protocols simultaneously, not just VPN logins, but everything passing through the firewall. Radius, NTLM, Kerberos, and LDAP for directory services. RDP, SSH, and WinRM for remote access. Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, and Postgres for databases. SMTP, IMAP, and POP3 for email. Every credential that any user or service sent through that compromised device was intercepted. The captured traffic fed into a multi-stage automated processing chain. A tool called SNIFTRAN reconstructed the raw data into PCAP files. A custom Python toolkit then extracted cleartext passwords, password hashes, Kerberos tickets, and NTLM authentication material. Output was formatted for Hashcat and submitted to a 4.5 GPU cracking infrastructure, including 36 enterprise-class GPUs, for offline hash cracking at speed. A compounding weakness in FortiOS amplified the campaign's effectiveness. When FortiGate devices are upgraded from older firmware, administrator passwords remain stored as weak 256 hashes until an administrator manually logs in after the upgrade. That migration is not automatic. Fortinet only introduced stronger PBKDF2-based password hashing in FortiOS 7.2.11, 7.4.8, and 7.6.1. Any organization that upgraded to those versions but whose administrators had not yet logged in was exposed. Their admin credentials sat on the device as, say, 256 hashes, easily cracked offline by a 4.5 GPU cluster working without time pressure. The attackers had fingerprinted firmware versions during the reconnaissance phase. They knew exactly which devices were vulnerable before they ever knocked on the door. The campaign's architecture was designed to be self-sustaining. Credentials captured by FortiGate Sniffer were automatically fed back into the campaign scanners, which used them to attempt compromise of additional FortiGate devices. A recursive loop that expanded the operation without any manual operator intervention. The campaign ran over 650 simultaneous credential harvesting pipelines. By the time it was exposed, it had accumulated more than 110 million credentials from over 430,000 FortiGate devices across 194 countries and 22,405 unique domains, backed by more than 260 attacker-controlled servers. This was not a smash and grab. This was a credential factory running around the clock. Post-exploitation revealed the campaign's highest ambitions. After cracking harvested credentials, the operators deployed Chisel, a TCP and UDP tunneling tool, and NeoRegAorg, a web shell-based tunneling framework. Both tools had previously appeared in Volt Typhoon state-sponsored campaigns, though definitive attribution of FortiBleed to any specific nation-state has not been confirmed. What is confirmed? On June 15, 2026, the campaign successfully cracked Kerberos hashes obtained from a NATO-aligned defense contractor and exfiltrated DFS backup data. That is the highest profile confirmed post-exploitation event in the campaign's documented runtime. The firewall that was supposed to protect that network had become the instrument of its breach. By mid-June 2026, the FortiBleed dataset, 86,644 verified credentials, had begun circulating openly on criminal underground forums. On June 18th, CISA issued an urgent advisory directing all Fortinet customers to disable internet-facing management interfaces, rotate all administrative credentials immediately, and apply the latest firmware updates. CISA made one point emphatically clear. Even organizations running fully patched devices should treat all credentials as compromised until rotated. The actor behind FortiBleed is assessed as an initial access broker, financially motivated and highly automated. FortiGate VPN accesses sell for between $200 and $5,000 each on criminal markets, and the buyers are frequently ransomware operators. Groups like Lockbit, Blacksuit, and Fog Ransomware routinely purchase exactly this kind of access to launch their intrusions. The sectors most heavily represented in the leaked data paint a picture of who faces the greatest risk. Telecommunications led with 5,616 entries in the dataset, followed by government at 591 entries, then banking, healthcare, energy, and critical infrastructure. These are not peripheral targets. They are the organizations whose disruption causes the most harm. The FortiBleed campaign spans 194 countries. It has been running continuously since February 2026, and as of the time of this reporting, it showed no signs of stopping. Every day the campaign runs, more credentials are harvested, more firewalls become relays, and more organizations unknowingly feed the machine. So what does defense look like against an operation of this scale? The guidance from CISA, Silk Radar, Arctic Wolf, and Fortinet is consistent. Rotate all FortiGate admin and SSL VPN credentials immediately. Treat any internet-exposed device as fully compromised until proven otherwise. Enable multi-factor authentication on all VPN and administrative interfaces. A stolen credential that requires a second factor is dramatically less useful to an attacker. Remove FortiGate management interfaces from the public internet entirely. They should never be reachable from outside your network. Upgrade to FortiOS 7.2.11, 7.4.8, or 7.6.1, and after upgrading, have every administrator log in once to trigger the PBKDF2 hash migration. This step is not automatic. Finally, audit your event logs for diagnose sniffer packet being invoked, for unauthorized account creation, for disabled audit logging, and for unusual outbound traffic patterns. If any of those indicators appear, passive monitoring is not enough. Engage incident response immediately. FortiBleed is a case study in what happens when perimeter devices are trusted but never scrutinized. Organizations invest in firewalls as security infrastructure, then forget that those devices are themselves attack surface. Credentials go unchanged for years. Firmware updates get deferred. And when an adversary gains a foothold, through a brute force default password or a recycled credential from a breach no one ever acted on, the firewall stops being a guardian and becomes a wiretap. The lesson is not that FortiGate is uniquely broken. The lesson is that no device, regardless of its role, is exempt from credential rotation, patching, and monitoring. Perimeter security that is not itself secured is not security at all. If this story changed how you think about network perimeter security, subscribe to CosmicBytez Labs for more cyber true crime breakdowns. New episodes every week at labs.cosmicbytes.ca.